You know, right. Nick Durst here with Joe Calabrese. Joe, I think I have another confession to make. I think our guest today is going to be getting the best of you.
He is. He's a huge fan of the 5's, as you could see, as am I. This is going to
Nice.
be
Who
really,
isn't?
really great. And he is currently one of the lead anchors for the Fox 5 o'clock and 10 o'clock news here in New York. So, oh my God, are we pumped to have him on, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Steve Lacy. Steve, welcome to the show. How you doing today?
Honored to be here. Thanks for having me.
Steve, we're excited to have you on this episode. And for anybody who's watching this episode, this is the first time I've ever seen Steve not in a suit. And he's pulling off the black t-shirt well. And I just want to ask you right away, because everybody's different. When you're going into the studio, are you coming in a suit? Do you have all your suits in your office? You come with your great hair already done up? What's the deal?
So right now, because it's 11, I came here to do the podcast because I've got a baby at home. So my office is actually a much cleaner, better setup for anything like this than home. And then I'm going to go to the park and do a run, go home, shower, and come back to work for 3. But everything is here.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
Yeah. So what my routine as far as that sort of stuff is, I come to work in, jeans, a dress shirt, and then all the ties and jackets and suit pants and everything like that is here for me, which makes it easier, because especially in winter and whatnot, to be walking into work in a suit and all that sort of stuff. So that, I got everything set up here in my office.
That's great. I'm hoping, there's no window there. So
no windows.
Glad to know that. Yeah, and it definitely makes things easier for you, not having to lug too many things back and forth.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So we wanted to know a little bit about your early beginnings here. Mm-hmm. When did you know, hey, I want to pursue a career in broadcast journalism? Was there anybody you watched on television or heard on radio that kind of inspired you? And what was your path just heading into college and your strategy?
Sure. That's probably the most interesting part of my personal story too, is how I got here, because it's a bit weird, but I feel like it's instructive and illustrative for people. So and the timing of this podcast is interesting, because I've been thinking a lot about it lately. It was 20 years ago. It was late October. I mean, I'm a dates guy, so I know it was October 24th. I drove from Boston to Bangor, Maine, interviewed for my first on-camera job, and then started a couple weeks later. So it's crazy. It's like I'm coming up on my 20-year anniversary on air, which blows my mind. But that's the craziest thing on earth to me. As far as my path, I graduated from college with a marketing degree. It's weird. I freshman year, I was a communications major, and then I just switched because at the time, I think really I didn't have the guts to full on say I'm a communications major and I want to pursue a career in broadcast journalism. It was too crazy to even say it out loud. It made me feel like a crazy person. Who can do that? That's not a real thing you can do. So I almost got a more straightforward career track major. You know what I mean? Because it's especially in college, you think you're never going to be out of college anyway. So you're I'll just get this major instead, marketing. That sounds more serious. And then I'll just keep partying until we graduate college, which will never happen, hopefully, but it does to everyone regardless. So I got out of college, kicked around a couple. So my first job, actually, I had a job right out of college from an internship senior year. I was selling payroll for ADP, Automatic Data Processing, which is a company based in Parsippany, New Jersey. I went to sales training there. I did it for a year. And this is probably one of the smartest things I've ever done or thought, was after a year of it, I'm like, this isn't what I want to do. What I want to do is actually pursue a career in broadcasting, which was always what I wanted to do. But once, I started pursuing a life that was something other than that, I said, oh boy, I got to put the brakes on this. And luckily at that point, I was smart enough to say, all right, you're 22 years old. Whatever your first job out of college is doesn't dictate the entire path of your life. It's going to be a bit of a process, obviously, to transition. But I made that determination at 22. Okay, I'm gonna switch. I'm gonna pursue doing something I want to do. You know, if you aren't happy 5 out of 7 days a week, that's not the math on that's never gonna add up to happiness. So I started doing behind the scenes jobs, like, I mean, really tangential stuff to TV, like, you know, PA jobs on TV shows, just, and I was in Boston too. So it wasn't like a hotbed of TV activity everywhere, but like slowly but surely I did a couple jobs, logging video, this, that, and the other. And the person happened to have a contact at Chronicle, which is an evening news magazine at WCVB in Boston. It's been on the air forever. It's still on today. It's sort of like an anomaly in the world of TV. It's like a cool little, you know, evening news magazine that's been airing since the early 80s. I got a production coordinator job there in January of 2000. And then the thing that's crazy, so much has changed, is like, this is before social media. This is before cell phones. This was when like the tools of the trade were still only in the hands of television stations. So when I was at Chronicle, I then had to make my fake reporter tape, like borrowing photogs at the station, beg, borrow, and steal, to be like, hey man, can we go outside and shoot a stand up? You know, and the photogs don't want to do it, but they're like, whatever, fine. And I made my fake tape, and then I sent that around all over the country. From 2000, 2001, you know, Rapid City, like all the small markets. I love whenever like on the weather map or something, one shows up like Rapid City, or because I'm like, I applied to all of those. There was a TV, I think it was called tvjobs.com. It was a subscription website, and they'd post the listings, and I would send my tapes out to every market in Texas, North Dakota, South Dakota, California, you know, anywhere there was an opening. And then in the fall of 2001, a former intern of mine at Chronicle, who we both went to BC, he was now working as a reporter up there. And he said, hey, we've got an opening. Why don't you come apply for it? And I was like, oh my God, that's incredible. And I met with a news director, and I got the job. And so it's like, that's another lesson right there. You know, there was someone younger than me who was my intern, who then got me the job. So, you know, be good to everyone. You never know who's going to come back and be in a position to help you, and vice versa, you know?
So you sound like a very confident, charismatic person. What kind of reservations did you have early on in your career about doing broadcast journalism? Was it the on-air stuff that you just felt like, like I could do this, but I don't really want to do this? Because I know that I kind of followed a similar path right now in my career. I've done a lot of stuff that doesn't really pertain to doing on-air stuff or recording. And Nick was the one who dragged me to do the podcast. And now that we started doing it, it's like an avalanche. It's just something that's continuously rolling on down the hill. And our guests have gotten bigger and better all the way now leading up to you. So was that more of it, or was it just there were aspects about the job you just didn't want to do?
Yeah, no, it was definitely all self-doubt. You know, it was, I mean, I think like, you know, I just growing up in the 80s and whatnot, when like, I mean, TV news was the only game in town. Like, so to actually say out loud, like, I want to do that as a career. I mean, it was like, well, of course you do, but like, you can't do that. What are you really going to do? You know what I mean? So I needed to experience doing something I didn't like to finally get up the guts to say, all right, well, I might as well at least go for something I like while I'm young. And then when it came to actually doing it, I mean, I promise you, I could not have been worse on air in Bangor. And that, you know, I mean, the thing about TV is like, you really, it's a real gut check, because once you're actually doing it for real, like, you know, when you're bad at it, you know, you're not looking at it with blinders. Like when I was terrible at it, I knew I was terrible at it. So then you have to have the guts to fight through it. And you also have to have the luck to have people continue to give you a chance, like when you're bad at it. That's the thing. Like those first jobs are crazy, because the first job you get in TV on air when you haven't done it or whatnot, like it's really someone giving you something that they're going to get no value out of. Like you're getting all the value from it. You know what I mean? It's like, because what you're providing to them is going to be of such low quality and low caliber. You know what I mean? It's like, it's such a miracle to get the first job. And it's like, you know, so then, you know, I was up in Bangor, and I mean, obviously my first winter there, I mean, it was just like, it was so cold. My apartment had broken windows. So like When I would shower, it felt like I was doing Polar Bear Club. When I was at work, there was no heat because it was just a small market rundown station. So literally, like, the only time I wasn't freezing was in bed, which was 13 hours a day. I would just sleep and be like, what am I doing? Like, what if this doesn't work out? You know, you are racked with self-doubt because you're like, I'm not that great at this. I'm making no money. Your friends are starting to get successful, because at that point I was 26, 27. Like, I started a little bit late, but now I realize it was the perfect age. But so you really have to, like, every day is a battle with yourself. You know what I mean? It's like, do I keep going with this? At what point do I pull the plug if it's not working? And then, so it, you know, it's really, it's an intense thing to, like, go out into the world, go out into a small market and entirely bet on yourself and be all in on it. Because the thing is, the reality is, the thoughts in the back of your head are real. Like, it doesn't work out for most people. So when are you being irrational continuing with it? You know, so that's like a crazy thought process to deal with on a daily basis when you're sleeping 13 hours a day. Freezing.
Yes. And the one, it seems like most of your growth comes when you leave your comfort zone. And number two, feels like even if something doesn't necessarily work out for you, you're always being directed to something better anyway.
Yeah.
So you gave us a great lead in. You mentioned Bangor, Maine.
Yeah.
My question to you is, what the heck else is there to do in Bangor, Maine?
Oh, not much. It's very beautiful. It's you know, they've got Acadia National Park up there. Now, the funny thing is, like, you know, when I moved to Bangor, of course, the only time I had been to Bangor previously was my one interview. So in my mind, what Bangor was like, I thought I was moving into some quaint lobstering village on the water. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. In my mind, it was like the south of Italy with lobster boats. But of course, it's just a landlocked part of Maine, with Walmarts, and it's snowed in. I mean, it's, you know, I'm from New England, I'm from Mass, whatever, but it's like the cold up there is like cold, you know, and like feet upon feet of snow, like you are snowed in a lot of the time. But it's like, it's really cool people. It's like salty New Englanders who are really sweet in an understated, very reserved type of way. Like, when you've lived in Maine and you've left, you love Maine, you leave with a love of Mainers, because it's such a dry, responsible, there's just no BS with Mainers. They're the best. You know what I mean? So yeah, I was up there for a year and a half, and then, so now I'm in the game, and luckily halfway during that, I became the station. See, and this is why you have to put yourself in positions to succeed. I became, halfway through my stint there in September of 2002. I then became the station's lead male anchor, just because the other guy anchor left. Like, not because I was good, just because I was the only dude there, and like, they didn't really care. You know what I mean? So it's like, so then I got to learn how to anchor for a year. And then now I'm like a broadcaster. I've been working for a year and a half. So a job opening happens in Springfield, Mass, in my home state. I go down and I get it, you know, and it's like, boom, now we're on the ladder, moving up. And so that's, you know, I learned so much about it, you know, like the self-doubt and all that stuff. It's invaluable to, like, really bet on yourself and then have to really see it through, you know?
Yeah. So you mentioned Springfield, your next job, WWLP TV. What was the process like there? Were you sending out your tape, and did they actually have you come in for some sort of on-air test?
Yeah, I was sending out my tape myself. That job, I assume I probably saw that listing online, because I don't remember knowing anyone there at the time. But for me, that was like, oh my God, you know, because so if you're from New England, like, Bangor TV is the best first job you can, because it's one of the only few starter markets in New England. So then to be able to go from there to like Massachusetts, and all my friends were in Boston, a couple hours east, I'm like, this would be like too good to be true. So I think I saw the listing online, sent a tape. The news director called me. I went down, I interviewed. I did a demo with the morning anchor at the time, who was about to be leaving. And then that was before I had an agent. So like, it's crazy, the small market stuff, because, you know, then the boss is like, okay, you've got the job. What? And it was something like the negotiation was like, so now I'm like, oh, good. Now I'm about to start making some real money here. This is gonna be great. Like, I'm an anchor in Massachusetts. Like, cool. Can't wait to start making money. And it was like, okay, so what do I need to pay you? You know, and it was the negotiation where, sorry, my light went up. Now I'm negotiating with him, but like, I don't know how to do any of that. So,
Right.
so I'm just like, I don't, you know, and I throw some stupid number and he's like, takes $2,000 off it or whatever. You know what I mean? So I remember I went back to my boss in Maine and I'm like, I got the job. You know, she's like, what does it pay? And I'm like, I think it was like 35 or something. And she's like, you know what I mean? It was like, oh wow, like crap, you know, you don't know what to do at the time, but it's still, even job 2, you're still getting paid in experience and reps. So the big thing that happened for me at Springfield was it was a 3-year deal, and I very shortly thereafter became the morning and noon anchor. Now, in like a Malcolm Gladwell Outliers type way, that was like revolutionary, evolutionary, was now I'm getting 3.5 hours of airtime per day, 5 days a week for 3 years. So like that becomes my Cavern Club. Like I'm getting an insane amount of airtime to just learn, get better, experience. So it's like, I feel like that sped up the growth process, because I very easily in that job could have been weekend evening anchoring 2 half-hour shows and reporting 3 days a week or something. And I would have gotten so much less desk experience.
Yeah.
You know, in the mornings, you know, like the mornings, like that's where everyone's been built for. This has been going on forever. It's like, you know, they keep adding shows, they keep going on earlier. That's where all the growth is, because people are getting up earlier, going to bed earlier. You know, when I was there in 03 to 06, I think we went on 5 to 7. You know what I mean? Like now everywhere is at least 4:30 a.m. It was the beginning of like, let's keep adding more morning. We can't sell enough morning. Let's do more morning. So that really, I got so lucky with that, you know, being moved to mornings and getting all the time on the desk.
So you mentioned negotiation process, and something that Nick and I always like to ask is representation. Do you have an agent? So obviously this is relatively early on in your career, but did that experience in Springfield ultimately just make you decide to pursue representation and an agent?
Yep.
Did that come after the fact? Did that come later on? You know, when did your
So
agent come into the picture here?
that's a good question. You guys know your stuff. So that obviously that experience was like, oh boy, like I don't do that again. So my contract was up Memorial Day weekend of 2006. So you know, at the beginning of the year, I sent out a resume reel to the 2 best agents. And they both got back to me quick. So I'm like, oh, cool. Like maybe I'm on to something. You know what I mean? Because it was like, I wanted to have either one of these 2, and they both got back to me. I spoke to them both. I picked my agent, Rick, who I'm still with to this day, which was just another, like, I've been so lucky along the way. You know what I mean? I got the right agent at the right time. So he's like, God, I would have loved to have gotten this tape a little bit earlier. You know, we've got 5 months to do a job hunt, but like, let's do it. Let's see what we can do. And so I signed up with him. So he's just, at that point, he's signed on, but only dealing with my job hunt forward from there. You know what I mean? He's not dealing with my current bosses. My current boss at the time didn't know I had an agent.
Right.
You know, he wasn't getting paid from my previous deal or whatever, but he then started sending it out to like big time markets. And you know, so he got me interviews, and like now now you go from Springfield, Bangor, now you start getting interviews in cities that have pro sports teams. So it starts getting exciting. You know what I mean? Like I remember I took an interview. I shouldn't say this, but like I remember I took an interview in Cleveland strictly to go see the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But I was like, well, why not? So they flew me out there. Like I saw a Celtics game with LeBron. It was, you know, I went to the Hall of Fame. It was amazing. It's like, oh, this is getting fun now. You know what I mean? Now we're like 5 years in, like opportunities are starting to rise. So I interviewed at 2 stations in Boston, got offered jobs at both. And then I wound up going back to the station where I'd previously worked behind the scenes a few years earlier. So now 5 years in 2006, now I start 5 years at the ABC affiliate in Boston.
So you're there, you're in Boston, and in your mind, was there ever a moment where you're like, you know what, if this is the top market I get to, because not many more markets to go above Boston.
Mhm.
You're saying I'm comfortable here. Yeah, this is it. I'm home.
Yep.
What are the different types of stuff they had you doing there? And ultimately, when your contract's coming up here, was it a hard decision for you and your agent to say, let's pursue the biggest market, New York?
So yeah, so when I get to Boston, the next like lucky thing that happened to me was I was hired as the weekend morning anchor. So that meant I was then reporting for the morning show 3 days a week. So I worked Wednesday through Sunday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, reporting on the morning show there, and then on the weekend anchoring. So I was able to really brush up my reporting skills in Boston, which is the most hardcore street report. Like you can't even imagine the stuff they have you do there. Like it was just like a crazy rude awakening of like the expectations every day of what you're going to break, what you're going to get, how many live shots you're going to do. You know what I mean? So it was like, that was a massive learning curve for me going from Springfield to Boston with not a ton of reporting experience, but that wound up being great. So like, I signed a 3-year deal originally there, and then we did another 2-year extension. Then by the end of my time there, we started with, you were asking like, what did you think about me? When I got to Boston, I was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. I've got the job I'll have for the rest of my life. I can't even believe how lucky I've been. That turned out not to be the deal. And by the end of 5 years, like I was ready to get out of there. So, we did the most download job hunt, ever. And the boss here at the time, had expressed interest in me like a year prior, but I had too much time left on the contract. So they stayed in touch. A couple people came and went. This job was like stayed open in a way like it never should have, would ever again. So then I got the job here after the end of the 5 years, and we had to keep it completely hush hush, like it was to the point where like when I had 2 weeks left on my Boston contract, they still hadn't come to me, so I got to call them, which was one of like the high, a great moment in my career when I got to just be like, hey, I'm giving you my 2 weeks notice. I got a new job. And they were like, what? You know what I mean? Yeah. And then like, where you going? I'm like, I'm going to New York, but that's all I can say, and that was that. And then that summer of 2011, I moved to New York, and it just didn't seem real to me. You know what I mean? It was like, I was so excited, but to whatever extent I was excited, I was definitely more scared, because I was like, I never even aspired to New York. Like that, it wasn't like, there are a lot of people I think who get into TV who they try to plan out their whole career. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go here. I'm going to do this. I was never one of those people. And I think the lesson from that is like, you don't get to dictate it, good or bad. Like you're throwing yourself in the ocean. You just have to hope you come to shore by doing enough of the right things over a long enough period of time. You know what I mean? Because there's so much element of fate to it. It's not just this linear job hunt. You know what I mean? Where it's like, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. So if they're not looking for you when you're in that window of time, when your contract is open, when you're up for a job, you know what I mean? It's like, you're just not going to get a job if you're not what they're looking for in this 3-month period when you're available to even say you're free to look for a job. It's so crazy. The whole thing, it's like, I'm overwhelmed with the gratitude when I look back at my career, because it's gone so much better than it ever should have, any rational, expectation. And like, I'm the first to admit that, you know what I mean? For sure. Yeah. And now I just passed 10 years in New York in August, and it blows my mind,
Yeah, I mean, Rick is just tremendous. Great, awesome agent there, making your life totally different. And obviously your on-air career has taken off, but I think the best part of moving to New York for you has to be meeting your wife.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think a lot of men would agree with you on that one, myself certainly included. No, I mean, that's so crazy, because actually, like, I don't know when this airs, but our wedding anniversary is October 18th. 6 years ago, we got married. You know, we've got a daughter now. I've got the golden doodle. I met her when she was an entertainment reporter at Good Day New York. I mean, it's like, all of it is so crazy that it went down this way. Like, I don't know if you guys like, you know, talking about the Foo Fighters and whatnot, but like the thing I always come back to is, have you guys seen the Eagles documentary on Showtime?
I have not, but a friend watched it before.
It's so good because like there's this Joe Walsh quote where he like, you know, when I look back on my life, when you live in it, it seems like, you know, like this random series of car crashes and there's no continuity or sense to the whole thing. Only at, you know, when you look back, it all makes perfect sense. But at the time, it definitely didn't. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's crazy how things happen. And then they all just come to make sense eventually. But yeah, it's wild. There is, I promise you, whatever my greatest dream of what TV would do for me in Bangor 20 years ago, I've exceeded it like by factors of 20. You know what I mean? It's crazy.
So obviously you start in New York, you're waking up really early, good day, wake up, good day, early call. You know, I'm surprised we haven't gotten to good day, start your day, 1 a.m. newscast at this point, but maybe one day.
That could be coming. I know for sure.
But what was your routine? You know, when were you waking up? When were you going to sleep? And basically, I'm very curious to know your eating schedule. Were you eating dinner at 8 o'clock in the morning when you're getting off air? How did that all work out for you?
You know, it's funny because I was filling in on the mornings. Yeah. So I just got like a renewed like taste of that lifestyle. It's a massive, it takes I love, you know, I loved working on the mornings because it's a fun, you know, it's more of a personality driven sort of fly by the seat of your pants, especially here, you know, coming from like a very serious station in Boston to like this place where you're allowed to have fun and be human, like was just life changing for me. The hours at that point, I was basically used to, because in Springfield for 3 years, I was the morning anchor. And then in Boston for 5 years, I was on the morning schedule. So then by the time I came here, I was on year 9 and year 10 of mornings. So in New York, I was on air from 4:30 to 7. So I would probably go to bed, you know, in a perfect world, 8, sometimes as late as like 10 or 11. I mean, I was single back then, new to New York, whatever. And then the greatest thing I did, we moved to New York. So I remember, I'm a date guy. July 21st was when I had to come and get an apartment for my August 1st move date. If you look up July 21st, 2011, that was the hottest July 21st on record. So when I was running around looking for apartments, I said, oh, wow, okay, I have to live within 5 blocks of the station. Like I can't be coming from, you know, the meatpacking district every morning, 4 a.m. in July on the subway, you know, all this. So I lived right by the station. I'd walk to work. And I mean, I would get in and, you know, like 4, I'd start pushing it a little bit, but, you know, I'd be ready to be on air at 4:30. And then I'd have the scripts of the computer up on set as we were going, you know what I mean? And I'd be tweaking and twisting as we did the show. But, you know, scheduling wise, eating wise, whatnot, that schedule is amazing because you walk out the door and you have your whole day. Like the mornings are great because you take all your pain right off the bat. Waking up's terrible. Oh my God. How am I going to, this is, you shower way too early, you know, like, but then it gets better as you head through the day. And next thing you know, like if I was on a live shot, like there are days where like, you know, you're done at 10 a.m. and you've got your day, like you're done. You're watching people, you know, trek into the office and you're free. It's incredible. So you mean you're wiped out, you're so tired. It's definitely, it is a challenge on that front, but you know, it makes you like, you don't eat well for sure. Because I think what happens with like, if you can look it up, but it's like, there's something about stress hormones, cortisol, lack of sleep, or like what happens is the reality of when you do the morning, you'll say, oh, I'm going to eat well. I'm going to like try to fight through it. But what happens is you go out and you get like a bacon, egg and cheese omelet at 10 a.m. because you just crave that type of crap. And then you have to go take a nap and whatever, you know what I mean? But it's a difficult schedule, but it's got advantages to it for sure, you know?
Yeah. So anchoring a really early morning shift, early one, to me, I would assume, you know, because from what I've seen on TV, anytime it snows, that means after you're in the studio, you are going outside for
Yes.
about 7 or 8 hours. So
Yeah.
do you have any interesting stories from that? And what's like the coldest you ever felt being out there reporting? And how do you run back and out of the truck? How do you stay?
Yeah. You know what? I have a very strong memory of that. It could have been my last day on Good Day, because I got bumped up to nights January 25th, 2013. And so I think the day I found out what wound being my last day on mornings, I didn't know at the time, was they sent me down to City Hall because it was freezing out. And I was just doing like, it's cold out live shots, because it's cold down there. That's just the wind coming off the river, concrete, you know what I mean? And I just was getting sound with people on the streets, just, throwing the bull, doing the morning live shot, hey, we're here, it's cold, so cold, blah, blah, blah. And that was, but I mean, I definitely remember the Christmas day. And in Boston, I did 10 million snow live shots. And the thing was there, it happened to always have a snowstorm Sunday night into Monday. And even though I was theoretically off Monday and Tuesday, I would always get dragged in for the Monday morning snow coverage. You're doing 10,000 live shots. But the thing is, like, that's amazing training for a broadcaster, because again, now you're getting a bunch of reps. They're coming to you all morning, and you're allowed to be creative to fill airtime. So you start getting bored of your routine, and you start trying to figure out ways to make it interesting. And that's when you start really growing as a broadcaster and getting interesting places. You know what I mean? Which is like everything I look back on, it always comes back to just how lucky I've been to be getting so many reps at all of different places, driven by mostly, the first half of my career being entirely mornings, where they're just doing so much more news than if you were at 6 and 10 every night. If I'd done my career backwards, I wouldn't be where I am. I wouldn't like gut to mornings if I had started at nights, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Because there was so many less reps. Once you do mornings, you can do anything, but I don't know that it works backwards like that.
Yeah, it'd probably be tough to go the opposite way.
I think so.
Weather is crazy, and weather is a huge part of every newscast. But I want to get your initial thoughts when you first meet Mike Woods. I mean, he's got to be the most physically in shape weatherman there is in America.
It's funny. I mean, I remember that clear as day. Because I started, it's New York. It was the first time. So what I always did, this was like a great scam I always pulled, because I was always so tired from the mornings. In between jobs, I would always make it like 5 weeks until I started the next job to get like a vacation. And because in TV, it's always, especially starting out, you've got like 2 weeks. It's impossible to schedule the time you want. So like in between jobs, is like, I'm always gonna take a nice long break in between. So that way you start fresh. You don't need to like come to your boss, hitting them up for vacation time right when you start the new job, because you just got it out of your system for a bit. But so now it's August. I'm like, I moved to New York 2 weeks before I started. I had 5 weeks off in total or something like that. But like, all of a sudden the alarm clock goes off day one. I'm like, oh my God, like I have to do this job now. You know what I mean? Because I was just having fun in New York, living in New York. Like, this is amazing. Oh my God. And then, but it's like, it's time to do it. I'm like, oh my God, like I'm in New York. Like, this is like overwhelming. So I remember walking into the studio, and the first day on the job, I was just observing. So I'm observing the person whose job I'm taking, you know what I mean? So it's a pretty, like, it's a tense, it's like a little bit like nerve-wracking, So I just gravitated to Mike, who was by the weather center, because he's just like, you see him and you're like, and he was so cool. And like, I just remember thinking like, oh, this is awesome. You know what I mean? Like, the people here are cool. It really calmed me down and like made me realize like, okay, I think like this can be fun. Because prior to here, TV wasn't really about being fun. So by Boston, I had lost any sense that like TV might be fun. I had thought by that point, like, oh, maybe that was just a naive, false assumption I brought in, that TV would ever be fun, because Boston was not fun at all. But New York here, at Fox 5, like it is fun. And it was seeing him, I started to realize, oh, this is going to be cool, you know? And I'll never forget just talking to him and being like, oh, he put me totally to ease, you know? He was amazing. And he is amazing. He's exactly how he comes off on air, which is, you know, not always the case. You know, but whatever you love about him is 100% genuine for sure. You know.
So we took the New Englander, we brought him to New York, and now he feels like a true New Yorker. And it's the truth. It's not every day that Nick and I have a guest on here who knows the in and outs of both Boston and New York. Obviously, it's you know, huge rivalry, and you know, kind of goes the same thing for kind of New York and Philly, even though Philly's a little bit closer.
The New York and Philly, New York and Boston, those are very similar things. And I think, you know, what's interesting, I think like probably the allure of me as an employee was, if you are hiring in New York TV, I think Boston, Philly are your best two places to pull from, despite the sports rivalries and that sort of nonsense.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, there's a similar. They both have that Northeast vibe, so you're starting at least on a similar vibration. You know what I mean? And it's the real markets, they're hardcore news and da da da. So yeah.
So Nick is a huge food junkie. Obviously, when you're like us and you grew up in New York, you're very spoiled with a lot of stuff. One of the biggest things you're spoiled with here is pizza. This is no other city in the world to get pizza like you do here. So do you have any favorite spots here since you moved here? Any places that are your go-to places?
Sure.
And how do you think, you can mention food overall, but the food, how do you think it compares to Boston?
I mean, it's limitless here. I mean, for sure. I mean, you know, New York's like foodie capital of the world. I mean, I feel like Boston, where I lived in a cool part of Boston called the South End, which actually had a good bunch of restaurants and whatnot. Like if you were to go visit Boston and try to do like a fun little vacation, where I lived, it would be where you would tend to hang out. So like I wasn't coming from a bad situation at all on that front. But I mean, yeah, the pizza here, certainly, you know, there's no comparison. I've got a couple, you know, my answers aren't going to be like the amazing, like, you know, the hot spot in Brooklyn or whatever. The reality is I live on the Upper East Side. I've got a couple places up here. I live right by Pizza Park, which is like just like my go-to slice. And the thing that's amazing about New York to me, it's, from my personal experience, it's been less about finding every world famous pizza place. It's just the quality of your go-to slice joint is so much higher than anywhere else. You know what I mean? It's like with Pizza Park, every time I go there, it's fresh, it's good. Like the consistency is 100%. And then, I mean, I like Patsy's too and stuff like that, which is around the corner. But as far as, you know, like the hardcore pizza war stuff, I probably don't have that much.
Have you ever had a dollar slice? That means you're a true New Yorker.
Oh, for sure. I have art studio space down right by MSG.
Yeah.
So there's one of those places right on the corner of like 39th and 8th. Sure. Yeah. And I mean, those do the job as far as like when you're hungry and you just need to eat something. It's amazing how filling two $1 slices can be.
Yeah.
You need it. And there's actually a down low, great slice spot. Actually, I'm just reminding is Upside Pizza, which is on, I think 39th and 8th.
Yeah.
Is awesome.
Right in the corner there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah. Right by a liquor store. That place, if you're ever going to SG for anything, like go out, get off one stop early, you know, at 40 or whatever, and walk. That's good stuff. So that's my low slice recommendation.
All right. So the other big question with food is New England or Manhattan clam chowder?
New England. No doubt. No, I don't even think people.
There's no competition.
Yeah,
there's no competition.
That's almost. I feel like Manhattan was just like, we need to have our own version. Let's do this, but no one likes it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's fair. That's totally fair.
So obviously now you're working nights, except when you're filling in the mornings. How did that opportunity come about? Was it a combination of, you know, that it's an opening, you're pursuing it, or is it the station manager coming to you and your agent? And how did that all work out for you?
Oh, there was no pursuing, there was no knowledge. Like at this level, like I feel like things happen to you. You don't influence what happens to you. You know what I mean? Like that day, literally, I've got a good memory for stuff like this, but like I remember that day well. I did those it's freezing out morning live shots. It was legitimately freezing out. I went home, napped, and then I think I might have seen it online that I was like the news anchor at nighttime.
Wow.
Like there was a I think that's what happened. I think like I saw it and then like
Did you see it on Twitter?
I think I saw it on one of these like, you know, TV blog things. And I was like what? And then I think like my boss called me 10 minutes after I saw, I'm like, what's going on? Am I the nighttime anchor? I think of something like that. But like, yeah, no, there's definitely no, like, believe me, I wasn't pulling any strings behind the scenes. Like that gets you nowhere. I mean, you just got to do what they tell you to do and whatever happens. You know what I mean? So yeah, no. But that was totally a surprise to me. I promise you, like you don't even know things are cooking me on this. I don't know. I wasn't expecting that one. I assure you for sure.
Yeah. So with your night schedule, what time are you usually getting in? Is there a production meeting, and how much of that maybe gets thrown out during the show if there is any sort of developing news?
Yeah. So you know, there's a 3:00 meeting that we have for the 10:00 show. So, you know, I anchor the 5 and I anchor the 10. A lot of the 5 o'clock stuff has to just start before we get here. So a lot of that's getting taken care of by the producers and stuff. There's like a 9:30 meeting, and that's where, you know, the news director, assistant news director, it's sort of the managers get involved in that, get that on its course. And then at 3:00, we do a half-hour meeting, which is now via Zoom, like everything else, but we're in the building to get ready for like, what do we want to do tonight at 10? And then, yeah, you know, when things come up, which happens a lot, you know, it's, I guess you're writing in pencil when you plan these shows, and, you know, things change all the time. You know, you build out certain elements of it, and some things, you know, you put in there like, all right, that's not essential, that can get killed, and we'll throw in the thing that just happened that's more important. So yeah, everything's always happening and changing on the fly for sure.
Yeah. Now, this is probably more related to your morning stuff, but what is the most excited you ever were to interview a guest, and who was that guest?
Oh, that's easy. I remember that clear as day. October of 2011, right after I'd started in Good Day New York, Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses came in to promote It's So Easy, his first book. Like, I will put my GNR fandom up against anyone on earth. Appetite came out when I was in 7th grade. I've listened to Appetite for Destruction 10 trillion times. So like that was where like, see, that's the difference between Boston and New York. New York, like celebs are just coming in every day to promote their stuff. They're not making the rounds in Boston, but they'll do it in New York. You know what I mean? So it's like, I got them to give me the interview. I'm like, it was, even though it was during, you know, the Greg and Rosanna show at that point, I'm like, I have to do this interview. Like, this is insane. So I remember he came off the elevator, and it's like, awesome. I'm just looking at Duff McKagan, like looking like the coolest person on earth, which he is. And I'm like, Duff, hey, I'm Steve. And he was like, he had one person with him. Like, I didn't know if it was going to be like this entourage of 50 people. He just showed up with like a publicist, and he was so awesome. And I'm like, hey, what's going on? And we just shot the breeze like before the interview. I'm like, hey man, like, can I do my first concert story? And he's like, yeah. Tell me about it. And I'm like, it was Guns N' Roses opening up for Aerosmith, 1988, Great Woods. And he was totally thoughtful. And he was like, you know, I think I remember that show, you know, like Sweet Child of Mine was going nuts. We were just driving around the country. We had no idea that, you know, the song was blowing up, because you're just on a bus in the world before the internet. So you don't know what's going on. And it was crazy. I mean, and since then, I've met so many people like that, strictly through this job. You know, I mean, you name it, Nikki Sixx, Ace Frehley, Sebastian Bach, Rob Delaney, comedians, Colin Quinn, like the amount of people you meet in a job like this is just insane. It's the greatest, you know?
So we know you're a huge Howard Stern fan too.
Right. I've met the whole Stern show.
You met the whole Stern show. How are they?
They're the greatest. So this is a great story. See, I'm telling you, the stuff that happens to you when you move to New York only happens here. Lisa G, when I moved to New York, lived across the street from me. This is the greatest. If you are interested in Stern, this is the greatest story. this was November 2011. I was doing a live shot for Good Day New York on, there was an idea that they might start giving letter grades to food carts on the street. So I'm just standing by a food cart being like, hey, blah, blah, blah. And this guy gets in my live shot and starts going, Baba Booey, Baba Booey, Baba Booey. And I'm like, oh my God, like I've been waiting for this moment to happen. Cause I'm like, you know, I see it happen, everyone in New York. I'm like, and like time slowed down. I'm like, oh my God, I'm now having the moment where it's my live shot getting interrupted by a guy going Baba Booey. So I push him out of the way and I'm like, yeah. I love Howard too, whatever. My friend was a TV producer. He had done a show called Man Caves with Artie Lang. So he texts me. He's like, dude, I have Lisa's number. Do you want me to give it to her? And maybe she'll do Howard 100 News thing on Local Reporter and Stern Fan gets Baba Booey. And I'm like, yeah, definitely. He gave her my number. She did call me. We wound up being neighbors, got, you know, friends to this day. But lo and behold, 2012, she brought me as her +1 to the Howard Christmas party with the whole staff, open bar. That was like next to my wedding, that was the most fun night of my entire life. It was insane. You know, Howard walks in, he comes down the line, everyone like, you know, he fist pumps you because he doesn't want to shake your hand. It was like crazy. Like, how you doing, Howard? And then like he stays for a couple hours, and then once he leaves, everyone just starts partying. Like then it's on, and it was so fun. So yeah, I mean, it's like I now I'm like friends with all those guys, you know, and like partially fueled by social media, but like, you know, I go to Phish with some of those guys, and it's just like it's crazy. But like that stuff only happens in New York. Like if you want to be a player in whatever world it is, you got to be where the game's happening. You know what I mean? You're not going to become in a world that doesn't happen in your neighborhood. So it's like wherever you're if you want to be in fashion, move to Milan. If you want to be in media, go to New York or LA. You know what I mean? You just got to go where it's happening, and things start happening that you won't even believe if you're lucky. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. It's crazy.
He's got to be in the right place at the right time.
100%. Absolutely. It's like, and I mean, there's so many, like, I honestly, I spent a portion of my day just thinking about like stuff like that. And it's like, I can't believe it's happened. You know what I mean? It's like, it's still not real to me that things like that have happened. It's just, it's been such a charmed run in New York. It's crazy.
So now I got to ask you about the 5's. I don't know if they're necessarily your favorite band, but I know you like them.
Mm-hmm.
Favorite song, favorite album?
I'm pretty mainstream 5's fan. Like, I remember when I was leaving Boston, I listened Wasting Light, Remaining Light. What was that? Whatever that one
It
came
was
out.
Wasting Light, and I think that's everybody's favorite album now.
Oh, is it?
Mine.
Is it?
It is mine. Yes.
Oh, no kidding. All right. Yeah, no, I love that. You know, I've only seen him once. I mean, I loved it. I'm probably halfway through the Dave Grohl book. I've got that on my phone. I mean, I think he's just an amazing dude. Great life. What a great attitude, outlook on life.
Still haven't met him yet?
I have not met him. No.
He's on the bucket list, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. But you know, it was funny. The one time I saw him was in Worcester at the Centrum when I was in Boston. And it was something like I didn't work because Worcester Centrum to get to from Boston is kind of a pain. But like my friend was like, listen, I'm going with my work friends. We got a car, like just come. And I'm like, sure. And I remember that night being like, oh my God, you know, like I forgot they have 35 arena sing-along songs. Like, you know,
every song is a sing-along.
It's mind-blowing. Like there's not one song you don't know. It was really such an awesome show. And I mean, that's 5 albums ago. You know what I mean? So now there's just more. It's their consistency in what they do at such a high level is so awesome, you know.
Sounds like you're anchoring. One last music question. Your Mount Rushmore of bands.
Oh, easy. Okay.
Oh, it's easy, huh?
Yeah. At least the first 3. I mean, Phish, Guns N' Roses, The Stones, and then if you need a 4th, probably the Dead, I guess. But like you know, it could also be like Motley Crue. You know, it's like different times in my life, the fourth slot. But I would, if you were basing it on like what I listen to now, it would be Stones, Phish, GNR, easy first three, and probably the Dead.
If anybody wants to meet Steve, assuming you could meet him at one of the many Phish concerts at the end of this year at Madison Square Garden, I'm assuming Steve will be there at least one of the 4 nights.
Yeah. So here's the thing, that's always pretty much a guarantee. Like, it's the only thing I worry about now. In any other year, I would be there for at least 3, if not 4 of them. I've got the unvaccinated baby at home. I don't know how that's going to play out this year. That's like only weird wild card, which is killing me. I went to the 2 Phish shows back this summer. It was down south, so I kept it off social media because I'm like, this is probably super irresponsible. So I didn't tweet about it or anything. But like, I don't know. We'll see. We're gonna have to see what happens with that. With indoor Phish, I'm not positive it's gonna happen. But if it does, and I'm there, it's funny. Like, you do meet. I talk to so many people. Social media is so powerful because like I just tweet sort of about nonsense. I don't get too involved in like. I stay away from anything hot button or both sides. Like, it's not my job to be refereeing or getting my foot in that ring at all. I've come to appreciate the wisdom of that more with time too. You know what I mean? It's like, my job's not to turn off people. My job is to, feel like a safe, trusted refuge to them. So, you know what I mean? So the point being, like, I tend to tweet about music and just sort of nonsensical New Yorkie stuff, but I've met so many people through social media, and it's a funny shtick in that world, being like the anchor who likes social media, who likes Phish. You know what I mean? It's funny.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Our last question from me here, and thank you for your time. It's been incredible so far. What was in your career or your personal life, I'm right moment? So what I mean by that is, someone is telling you, hey, Steve, you got to do this way. And you said, I don't think so. I'm going to do it this way. And ultimately, you'll see why I am right.
I feel like New York is that moment for me. I feel like, previous jobs, particularly the previous job, it was endless negative feedback about what you're doing wrong in an attempt to just make everyone be a replaceable cookie cutter unit of news distribution and and it wasn't allowing me to be me. So that eventually got to the point where I couldn't tolerate it anymore. And that was the best move I ever made. It was like, if I had been 10% more comfortable, maybe I never would have made the leap to New York. But by being forced into that position, I came here, and then I just feel like it's been validated by my success here that, it's like, I am more than just cookie cutter thing you want me to be. I've got more to offer than that. And if that's not the deal, then I got to get out of here. And I feel like that's been vindicated big time,
So unfortunately, I have to mention this. I went with my cousin a couple weeks, 10 days ago, probably now. Went to the wild card game at Fenway, and that sucked. That was terrible. And before then, I had been to Boston multiple times, and I love that city. It's so clean. It's kind of very unique things to do. So I need one really, really great string of words or a couple sentences. I need the Boston accent. We need it.
I can do that. I can do that all day. So now went down to Fenway Park, right? You were down there by the park, you had a pocket car. I mean, it's wicked expensive down there, guy. But like, I mean, the thing is, the socks are awesome. I mean, I love Noma.
It's so good. It's so free flowing. It's so natural.
The thing that's hysterical is, my wife's from Brooklyn, but we go visit my mom all the time on Cape Cod. She's got like a crazy mass accent that she's sort of covered up. I've sort of covered mine up since college. I went to school in Boston, but like starting freshman,
it peeks through. If you know what to look for, it does.
No. My friend sent a clip where we were doing a story about George H.W. Bush had a stent put in an artery, and and then I said ottery, and I was like, and I remember one time I said Jita, and my producer was like, dude, what are you doing? Because what happens with the Mass accent is you can, if you see an R coming, you can fixate on it, and where you'll get in trouble is if there's another R like 2 words later, you won't be paying attention. So that one will slip by you and you'll do a crazy math. Like something like Martha's Vineyard. Like there's so many R's in that. Like if I have to do on Martha's, like I have to think about it so hard. On Martha's Vineyard today, Larry David said it's that, like, so that's actually the worst word on earth for me. Say, I just want to say Martha's Vineyard. And it's the reality is I've realized like the Mass accent, it's basically like an island dialect where like it's fun to say it. It's relaxing. Like you're just sort of half saying everything. It's like when we visit my mom, my wife who's grew up in part of Brooklyn, like she loves the Mass accent. Like she'll go into it. She thinks it's the funniest thing on earth, but like she'll start by making fun of us, but then like eventually she's just kind of using it unironically because it's an easier way to speak. When you don't say ours, it's just easier. It just flows. You know what I mean? So
does she drink coffee in the morning or does she drink coffee?
Coffee. Oh yeah. It's yeah, I mean all that stuff. The Mass accent is real, and where I grew up from, it's like particularly pronounced. So it's what you said is so dead on. It's always lingering in the background. Like you can't get cocky about the fact that you don't have one anymore. If you had one, you still have one, and if you're not vigilant, it's going to come out on air the next second.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if your child has a Brooklyn accent or a Boston accent.
Oh my God, it's how much time we spend with grandma will dictate that for sure. Yeah. True.
It'll probably be a little bit mixed, but Steve, thank you for joining us. This is so much fun. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, what a blast. Wow, you
It
guys
was
came,
amazing.
you knew everything. That's amazing. It's I mean, it's, who am I? It's great. It's fun to be interviewed by 2 guys like you as prepared as that. That was fun. I loved it.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
So if there's anything else you would like to share or promote for yourself, go right ahead. We really, really appreciate your time. Thanks again for doing this with us.
Yeah, no. I mean, just watch, the Fox 5 News at 5 and 10, Monday through Friday. Watch it, when you can. That's what we're here for, is to get eyeballs to the TV. Social media wise, you can find me. It's interesting when you guys sent me the link for like podcast. I'm like, oh God, this is another person who thinks I'm Steve Lacy, the musical artist who like did the thing with Vampire Weekend. I'm like, I literally opened and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to tell these guys I'm not the musician. Email the right person. Come on. And it's like, oh, they want me. And it was very flattering and I appreciate it.
Yeah, we love the Fox 5 family. So we're happy to have you. We appreciate it. And that's going to do it here for this episode of You Know I'm Right. For our very special guest, Steve Lacy, and my co-host, Joe Calabrese, I am Nick Durst, and this has been You Know I'm Right.